Hello and welcome, everybody. It is 3 p.m. Eastern on a Thursday. That means we're here at Quaker Steak and Lube, coming to you live for the Line Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. I am quite obviously, once again, not Jeff the Ironhead Byers, not the voice of Penn State wrestling. I'm Chris Bucanani from the obligatory PSU pregame show and podcast, joined by former Penn State offensive lineman Keith Goon Conlin. And Goon, as you and I have discussed pre-show, there is nothing, and I do mean nothing, Goon, going on in the world of sports, professional or college today. There's no stories to discuss, especially not here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
There's one Sixers fan at the table right now.
The Phillies won last night.
There's one Sixers
which is
fan
great
at the table
news.
right now.
Salvage one game out of the 3-game series against the Dodgers.
That was beating Kershaw was a pretty good one.
Absolutely. Wheeler versus Kershaw. I mean, that's the two aces.
What is it with the Sixers?
So today, Goon, we're going to engage in one of my favorite Goon and Ironhead show traditions.
No. We got to get through this. Otherwise, I won't talk.
All right.
I won't talk.
All right. Okay. Let's have it.
My friends at home, Tim Sorber, pretty astute basketball guy, loves basketball. I mean, as we all grew up loving basketball, I just can't watch it anymore.
I mean,
it's unwatchable.
I love talking to Philly basketball guys because it's a great basketball city. Yeah, there are a lot of really smart, savvy fans in the Sixers fan base.
I completely agree. And what happened to these super athletes that we have nowadays who have the greatest training methods, the greatest athleticism, the greatest strength, nutrition, and this and that? Why Joel Embiid, 48 minutes is too much of a load for him in one night? Why is this a thing now? Why is this a thing when – and then my question constantly is, and again, I have not watched 1 minute of the NBA in years, but I have to listen on watching social media if my friends absolutely powder here, completely blowing up about the 76ers and this and that and how Simmons and Joel Embiid are – I mean, they're down 3-2 right now, right?
Yeah.
They're on the brink, and they are a much better team. But how long is this process going to be, Booch? And what would my question always is, what would Moses Malone do to Joel Embiid?
Oh, yeah.
Other than break his thighs, like his femurs would both be broken by halftime.
Well, look, there's no question. I think Dave Jones for the Patriot News had a good column about it today. Like, there is just no piss and vinegar in this team.
Nothing.
Which is what happens when you are playing in front of your home crowd. You've got a double-digit lead, and it evaporates,
and
right?
You're making $800 million amongst 13 guys.
Yeah.
Like, there's really no, well, what's going to happen? Okay, we didn't win a title. Oh, well. I'm going to go home in my $15 million home. There's no hunger anymore. You know what I mean?
I mean, look, though, Kobe Bryant made a lot of money. Michael Jordan made a lot of money.
Well, we can't go back there. We're not allowed to talk about that. I mean, that's the past.
And look, like him or not, LeBron James has made a ton of dagger plays in his career. I mean, there are still guys who are super wealthy and just have a level of desire that it doesn't seem anybody on the 76ers roster is capable of getting to.
The only person I know with that I watch, I guess I should say I have seen, is Westbrook. It seems like he's the kind of guy who would literally rip your heart out.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
W.
Yep.
But no one likes playing with him because he's too tough.
And
you know
I mean, look,
he yells at me and this and that. Come on,
and he's ball dominant. I mean, look, he's tough to find. He's tough to Russell Westbrook is tough to build a roster around, kind of in the same way Allen Iverson was, just because he needed to have the ball in his hand a lot.
He was brutal to watch. Now, he was great to watch, but as a team player, no. Iverson was the worst thing that could happen.
Which is why the 0-1 team that went to the finals was perfectly constructed, because you had 4 starters who each had their own specialty, and they were all there to complement Iverson.
What in the hell was Matt Geiger's specialty?
He wasn't a starter. Remember, Dikembe Mutombo came in and replaced him.
No.
That's right, man.
Cookie Monster. All right. So, Butch, you got that off your chest there?
Thank you.
Wasn't that bad?
It could have been worse. We'll put it that way.
Well, tell the story. You were like, got home a little late from work, and you're like, you know what?
So, okay, so I have a sixth sense now. Over the years, I have honed a preternatural ability to sense tremors in the force of a Philly sports collapse impending. So I got done putting my daughter to bed. I had been tracking the score on my phone, And I get back, I go to our bedroom, and my wife is watching an episode of Downton Abbey
Put your daughter
on
to bed.
Netflix.
He was 25 point lead.
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife goes to turn off Downton Abbey. I'm like, no. You know what? You finish this episode. It's fine. We'll see where we're at the end. So Downton Abbey is over. I look at my phone. I open Twitter to get the score. The first two tweets I see are from two 76ers fans I know, and they both say something along the lines of, better get the starters back in there, down to 13 points. And all of a sudden, like my spider sense started tingling. And I was like, you know what? New episode of Loki just dropped today. I think I'm watching that instead. And my God, am I so happy I did not watch the end of that game. I might not be here today. I might be in the cardiac ward of Mount Nittany Medical Center.
Guys is on Doc Rivers. Having a feel for the game. I mean, yeah, it has to be, right? Oh, shut up, Whitmer. Go Hawks.
Yeah, there's no question. I'm not even put it up on the screen.
If Whitmer can name 3 players, but he can't because he's driving right now and he's going to be on his phone, he couldn't name 3 players from the Hawks. He probably could name 2.
Dominic Wilkins.
Well, I mean, historically, yeah. Historically, yeah. We're
Mookie
good.
Blaylock.
Mookie Blaylock. What's his claim to fame there, Booch? In the rock and roll world, what's Mookie Blaylock's claim to fame? Oh God, I'm gonna get you on something like this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pearl Jam's original name was the Mookie Blaylocks.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yep. He has the second best name in the history of college basketball. You're supposed to ask me who was first.
God Shammgod.
God Shammgod.
Yeah.
You're never going to compete with God Shammgod.
You're not.
I mean, everybody's playing for second place. There's no doubt in my mind. None. 0. So
did I redeem myself with how quickly I knew that one?
Yeah, okay, you got God Shammgod. I mean, we must have talked about God Shammgod before. Providence.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, that's just so obviously the answer.
Okay. I'll make sure we're on the same page.
God Shammgod.
Good job, Powder.
Thank you. We're here at
Quaker Steak and Lube. Matt Geiger in you with paint a little goatee on.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I used to rock the goatee in college. I could bring it back. All right, so we're here at State College's Quaker Steak and Lube. It's a Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show.
Beautiful day, man.
It is a gorgeous Happy Valley day, as we've discussed. Nothing, no sports news to discuss. We're done with that now. So I promised everybody in the Facebook post. Story time with Goon.
Oh, geez, here we go.
I'm like, Goon, when I come on here.
I hate talking, Chris. Come on.
I like doing story time with Goon, and you had a great suggestion, which is why don't I tell you the story of the Conlin family's long legacy.
The progression of the Conlin family to Penn State.
Of playing for Joe.
Yeah.
Fire away, man. Good start.
January, February of 1983. Joe's coming off a national title over Georgia. And, even my wife's even listening. She knows the Pearl Jam answer.
Yeah, but did she know God Shammgod? That's the question.
She would not know God Shammgod. Yeah. So Joe, the old man comes to the house in 1983, just a month off the national title over Georgia, stuff like that. Recruiting my older brother, who's at Bishop McDevitt High School outside of Philadelphia. So, 9 years old. And I'm just hammering the old man for autographs. Hammering him. I don't know. I mean, I've literally told this story. I don't know if I've ever told you. So all the stories are pretty cool. So in like my Holy Martyrs grade school program, Joe committed a violation that night. He was a $5 sponsor of the Holy Martyrs school yearbook, Joseph V. Paterno. In the back of like patrons and stuff like that. So
I'm trying to think about this though. That's a benefit to your school, not to your brother's
school. He tried to buy my brother off by giving his little brother a $5 sponsorship.
You know what, though? I think that's an end around on the NCAA regs, though.
It was a donation to a church.
Nope.
God,
the old man was good. Very savvy.
Slick. You. So I was hammering him. And then, my father was a working man, blue-collar guy through and through, and we were Eagle fans, Sixer fans, Flyer fans, all that stuff, Philly fans, and nothing really. No one really went to college and from growing up and stuff like that. So, my old man, all he wanted to hear Joe Paterno say was, "Hey, listen, I'm going to take care of your son like he's my son."
Yeah,
and that's all my dad wanted to hear. All he wanted to hear. He goes, all the other coaches, Bobby Bowden was in the home.
Florida State at that point.
Yeah,
okay.
Chuck Amato from the Allentown area. He recruited to Philadelphia. got a lot of Philadelphia, South Jersey guys down to Florida State. I visited there, actually. Well, he went after both of us and didn't get either one of us.
Chuck Amato ended up coaching NC State at one point, didn't he?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So he was a D-line coach for the Seminoles for decades.
Sure.
Winter Bobby. So the old man tells my dad, I'm going to take care of your son. And Dick Anderson was his recruiting coordinator, which it was the guy recruiting my brother. So, I've known Dick since 1983. And then my brother commits to Penn State and has a fantastic career here, All-American on the 86 team, all that stuff up for the Outland Trophy. And that in itself is actually a funny story. My brother got a phone call. We were having a Sunday dinner. Like, hey, you didn't win the award. He goes, what award? And this is when they did it. It was like awards weren't even like we talked about. He got a phone call and said, hey, you didn't win the Outland. He goes, what's the Outland? And, no one even knew he was even nominated for it or anything like that. There wasn't like this big ceremony down in Orlando every year.
The athletic department didn't put out like graphics.
No, they were putting graphics out there.
Promotional marketing
campaigns. Chris Conlin played left tackle, right tackle, and how many pancakes he had. And they didn't do any of that then, so there's no publicity. So that's just funny because then, my brother goes to Penn State, and this is where the story all starts, is that we were laughing and joking that, like, when my brother first started coming to Penn State in 1983, my parents would get up at Saturday morning at like 4 a.m, and then they would make the trek to Penn State. It was every bit of 4 hours then.
Oh, yeah.
Every bit of 4 hours. So
I remember having to leave for football
o'clock.
Games. And, it was still dark out. It felt like, I was little, so I thought I was getting up at like 2 a.m. Yep. It was probably more like 5 or 6, but still.
So we would just drive straight into, it was either Nittany Beverage or Center Beverage, one of the two beverages, the beer stores, get a keg.
Nice.
And go right to the tailgate. This is the first couple games. And then my parents caught the tailgating bit, bug. And awesome. I tell the story all the time. They were leaving Saturday morning, and then they would stay at my brother's apartment Saturday night, and we leave on Sunday after church and stuff like that. Yes, we did go to church. And then by the time 1997 comes around, and we'll get to that, when my younger brother was here, it was his last game. Like, my parents were at the point where they were leaving Thursday afternoon and then coming back Monday afternoon.
Awesome.
It was just like one of those. They were up there for one day before, and then it was like a 5-day vacation.
What I like to call the Penn State weekend.
Absolutely. And the progression of them coming up here and tailgating, and they had the same families they tailgated with and in the same spot. And always the highlight of the tailgate was George Paterno and Fran Fisher stopping by on their way. It was always their last stop. Awesome. And I'm saying last stop, so what does that mean?
Well, understood.
Their cars were pretty close, and they'd had their fill throughout the day, and it would be funny. They'd be, laughing and talking and joking and stuff like that. And so my parents literally had lifelong friends from that. Like, my brother had his friends in here, but my parents had they were sometimes closer to the players' parents than my brother was to his teammates. It was pretty cool. So
that's cool.
That's a pretty cool 5 years. He played here 4 years.
So let me run it back just real quick. A couple of questions. Going back to the recruitment.
Yep.
So you talked about So you talked about Florida State coming in. Who were some of the other schools who were recruiting him?
He went to West Virginia, Syracuse, anywhere, Notre Dame. Of course, Catholic boy from Philadelphia.
Sure.
Catholic League, they're going to go after. So it was, all those schools.
And very different world in terms of who played whom at that time. So West Virginia was probably a big college football brand in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
back in the early '80s. They played Penn State all the time
every year. It was the Big East before the Big East. So
right.
He could have. Either one of us could have gone anywhere pretty much. It was just we just had to narrow them down pretty quick. But it was just pretty funny, the progression of it as it went on. Well, my parents went through with my brother. And it was he was the first one to really go to college, and it was oh, have fun and this and that. By the time I went to school, it was did you do your homework? Did you get your grades? You're not going to be able to play if you don't have grades and stuff like this. I'm like, where the hell did you guys come from? So the one story that I constantly tell, and you probably have heard it or read it, that the old man comes in the house and I'm pilfering him for autographs, and I'm going the next day to school and I'm selling Joe Paterno autographs. Pieces of napkin, pieces of just paper and stuff like that. I'm going to sign this. So the last time he looks at me and he goes, listen, kid, he goes, I'll sign this one for you, buddy. He goes, I'm coming back for yours in 10 years. Right. And then, I thought nothing of it. It was like one of those things. Okay, I got another autograph. And then, and then he comes into my house in January of 1991, and he walked in. I took his coat off his back. He turned around. He goes, "I'm here for my autograph."
Unbelievable.
And I was like, "Oh my God!" And then,
wow.
My mom and dad were like, mouths hit the ground, like, "Holy crap! Does he really remember that?" And it's true. I mean, he recruited the family, and the mothers and the grandmothers and everybody as much as he recruited the kid. So that was like one of those like really, really funny things. That's what I remember him for, is having that kind of memory. And then
now I know you came up here a lot during your brother's career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you right now, you match my childhood up to anybody, and I'm hanging out. I'm 10, 11, 12, and 13, 14 years old, hanging out at Penn State. I'm 12 or 11 and 12 years old, and Penn State's undefeated. They lose a game in 2 years. And I'm up here every weekend staying at my brother's house, his dorm, not his dorm, but his apartment on Friday night because they're all out. And then I would stay there Friday. And then on Saturday, they would, all the players would come back, and I would be, I don't know how, why my parents let me stay there.
It explains a lot.
I would
I'll just put it that
kid,
way.
And it was always the little running joke of how, who would get the 12-year-old, who would get the 6'4" 12-year-old hammered. So, I mean, I'll put it up again. I'll put it up against anybody. I remember watching Mike Tyson fights.
Wow.
I mean, I really remember I'm watching. I'm sitting here. I'm standing next to Shane Conlin, Mike Russo, my brother, and I'm Tim Manoa, and I'm like sitting here like these guys are my freaking heroes, and I'm sitting here watching Mike Tyson beat up, Buster, not Buster, but James Blood, whatever his name was.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching him beat up Larry Holmes and stuff. It was like really, really cool. It was a pretty cool time. So, I mean, and then then I go and have a really successful, good high school career, and it was like, oh well. You're 17 years old, and I was coming here, but when you're 17, you just want to be a smart ass to your mom and dad, and like, oh, I'm not going here. I'm going to Florida State. I'm going to Florida State because I visited Florida State for the Florida State-Florida game in 1990, and that was an amazing trip.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I had some.
That was a hell of a rivalry back in the early to mid 90s.
It was pretty fantastic.
Those Spurrier and Bowden teams, and those guys were both at their peak. Coaching those two programs. Yeah, those were great games to watch.
That was an unbelievable time in the late 90s, late 80s and early 90s with the, those Miami and Florida State games and the Florida and Florida State games.
Yeah.
So I go down there on a Friday night to Florida State.
That was like more like an NFL game.
It was.
Like with the guys on the field and the atmosphere and everything.
There's 5 guys
the
on
salaries.
Exactly, right. there's 5 guys on an official visit with me, and Eric Clare was one who ended up being my roommate here for 4 years at Penn State.
Yeah.
He was on an official visit with me. He was from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and I'm from Philadelphia area. So we get a hotel room and this and that, and then like the graduate assistants takes us out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to every bar that they have on campus, and they're just like, hey, they're football recruits. And like, all right, go on. And I'm telling you right now, I ate alligator. I never had alligator in my life, but I ate alligator every possible way you can actually cook alligator, I think, that weekend.
That's not bad.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really, really cool. And you're 17 years old, and you're hanging out at a college bar. And there's a couple of guys there who were friends with a guy who my brother was a teammate with the Dolphins and then the Colts. So the word got spread that I was, so-and-so's buddy's little brother and stuff like that. So I was like, it was a crazy trip, man. And then
Deion there at that point? I'm trying to remember.
No, he got out in 89.
Okay, all right.
But I remember, it was the difference is I will give you this much. I visited Florida State. I got there Friday afternoon. We did the campus tour. It took 15 minutes. Did talk to a history professor for about 12 minutes, and everything else was just football.
Okay.
And it was football party and having fun and this and that. It was really cool. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was like one of those things I'll tell my family till the day I die. I mean, how much fun we had. But I just, and then my official visit to Penn State was the worst visit I had because I was playing high school basketball and in Catholic League you played Friday and Sunday.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this.
I remember leaving. I came up on a Sunday night after a basketball game, and we stayed Sunday, Monday night, and then left Tuesday morning. It's like, I'm like, Derek Pickett was up here. He was from my hometown, and I had known Derek since we were little kids, and he was my host, and he was like, man, everybody's all hungover, man. You should have got here Friday. And I was like, dude. And Pick played at McDevitt where my brother had played, and he played hoops, so he got it. And it was like Sunday night. I'm like, hey, man, let's drink. And they're all the guys are like, dude, I'm
done.
I'm hurt. We got lifting tomorrow, running on Tuesday. And I'm like, come on. You know, like my official visit, you know, yeah. It was just, it was the worst of the trips.
So where else did you go? FSU, Penn State, and
Syracuse. I got snowed in at Syracuse. I missed a high school game my senior year in high school. I went up there on a Friday. There was a huge blizzard. And then I went up there, me, Marvin Harrison, who ended up committed there, and Sean Wooden, who went to Notre Dame. We were all from the same area, so we all went up there in the same weekend, and that was a good time up there. But it was like, I never saw snow like that in my life, man.
Kind of reminds me of the story of Larry Fitzgerald's recruitment. Do you know that?
It may remind me, but go ahead.
So Larry Fitzgerald.
High school Larry Fitzgerald or Valley Forge Military Academy? Did you know that?
Oh, probably this would be right before he committed, so probably military academy, I guess.
Yeah, he went to Valley Forge.
So he was on his way. I guess he was coming. He was in Ohio and was going to come to Penn State for an official visit.
Yeah.
And they got snowed in,
Lord.
Terrible snowstorm. Snows them in Pittsburgh, and the guy who's driving him happened to know an assistant coach on the Pitt staff. So that guy was like, "Oh, of course I can take you guys in." You know what? While he's in town, why don't you bring him over to the football building? Let me show Larry around. Never made it to State College. Yeah,
I never knew that.
Yeah,
that's brutal.
Pennsylvania weather, man. Totally bonus on that one.
Well, he came down from Minneapolis, so he knew what weather was all about. That's pretty funny. I never heard that.
Do you know the story about
what year would that have been? What would that have been?
Larry, let's see. We
had some vicious storms here in the late 90s.
Did he graduate in 01? Was he gone by the time Larry Johnson was a Heisman finalist?
I don't know.
See, this is terrible. That phase of my life, I killed a lot of brain cells, man. Many brain cells.
That was goateed.
Yeah, absolutely. But not to get too far off the Conlin family, I'll tell you one more great Penn State recruiting story. Do you know the story of how Mike Ditka got snatched from right out under Joe Pa?
Well, I know what Mike Ditka wanted to be when he grew up.
Yeah, exactly.
So he wanted to be a dentist.
He wanted to be a dentist. Can you imagine Mike Ditka?
When the whole scandal broke and he was like, I was all wrapped and ready to go to Penn State, and Joe Paterno was recruiting me, and I was going to be a Penn State guy, but they didn't have a dental school. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, can you imagine that son of a bitch's hands in your mouth?
Yeah.
Give me the Novocaine. You don't need it. Shut up. It's just like punching you, knocking you out.
So he's at a camp. And back then, football camps were like, and you see, and remember the Titans, like they would actually go away to a camp.
My high school did.
Did they really? Yeah. Okay.
Up to your out when we went to Canadensis, Pennsylvania.
Is that right? Yeah. Wow. That's
amazing. I literally I just had a shiver go down my back thinking about those 5 days.
So, but they're at wherever Aliquippa camped at.
Yep.
And Paterno basically had, he essentially had an order that Ditka was to be locked up and not see anyone. He had like an understanding with their head coach. And the Pitt coach gets a Pitt booster, like basically slides him in because he's like he's some dentist from Pittsburgh, slides him in under the radar, and this guy gets an audience with Ditka and gives him the hard sell about how Penn State doesn't have a dental school, and thus ended the Penn State recruitment of Iron Mike Ditka.
Oh man, almost got fired for it. Rip Engel may have fired him. Was Joe the head coach then? He'd have been before 50, right? Or 1960.
Yeah. No, that would have been when he was quarterbaps coach.
Oh, okay, geez, Louise. Yeah. So
apparently Joe just absolutely lost his mind.
He almost lost his job. Rip may have fired him. Yeah, but I laugh my ass off every time I think about Mike Ditka's hands in somebody's mouth. Let's even think it was a pediatric, shut up. Big cigar in his mouth, reaching down in your mouth, jacking your jaw, prying it open, ripping molars out. Oh, Iron Mike.
Amazing.
Yeah, buddy. So, so I go back to my parents, and I got here in 91. My parents, from the 83 to 87. And in between, when my brother was in the NFL and I was in high school, but there was a couple weekends we didn't play. and or it was later in the year or early in the year, my parents would still come to Penn State games. Like, they bought into it that much.
That's awesome.
They really, really did.
Let me ask you: you were always coming here?
Again, like I said, I was 17 years old. My dad was like, "You're going to Penn State, right?" And I was like, "No, I'm not going to Penn State. You can't make me do this and this and that." But in my heart, I was like, "I'm going to Penn State."
Okay.
But I would just be a tool to them and say, "I'm going to Florida State." My dad would be like, "Well, go to Florida State then."
Well, yeah, I mean, you're 17.
I would never see
right?
you play. Yeah, I'm 17 years old. I know everything. I'm even smarter then than I am now.
That's usually how it works.
Amazing.
And it's not just because of all the brain cells you get.
It's not CTE. I was just much smarter as a 17-year-old punk. Yeah, so I was like telling my dad, I'm going to Florida State, you guys can't tell me. And my dad just looked at me and says, go to Florida State. I won't see you play for 4 years. That's the bottom line. He goes, you won't see your family, you won't see your friends, you won't see your girlfriend. And I was like, wait, what? No, wait. And he goes, you go to Penn State, we're there every weekend. So my parents sat me down and went through the calendar of when we were going to go visit and stuff like that. And I was supposed to go to Notre Dame with Barry Alvarez, was recruiting me. And then I was supposed to go to their banquet. And then he took the job at Wisco. And then the tapering, it was a little fall off of the recruiting. And it was like that at that like pretty much the crucial time of when you're deciding where you're going to take your 5 visits. And I was like, well, I haven't heard from them in like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm like, I got to plan on going elsewhere. So Notre Dame calls. I think Skippy Holtz called me. I think he was there, and he was like, hey, are you still coming out to here for our visit? And I'm like, hey, man, I planned something else, man. I can't do it. So
yeah,
it is what it is. And the story is, to go back to Notre Dame, is if my father had told this story before he died and we were laughing, he goes, if his father was alive, there's no way my brother would not have gone to Notre Dame.
Oh,
absolutely no way he wouldn't have gone to Notre Dame.
Literally every American male born before 1930 was a New York Yankees and Notre Dame football fan, I think.
Yeah. And then Duke basketball. And then the LA Lakers.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the whole thing with the recruiting and all that
stuff.
Well,
you know what? A lot of them were Dallas Cowboys fans, too, because they loved Roger Staubach so much.
Captain America.
Yeah.
Well, you know why everybody likes the Steelers and everybody likes the Cowboys, right?
I mean, because they won a lot of Super Bowls?
No, they were on every weekend.
Oh, well, that too.
And the NFL is not what we know it as today, so we would have, the CBS would be playing the Cowboys game every week, and then the NBC would be having the Pirates or the Steelers on every week.
Yeah.
That's why the fan bases are so big out, and they each won 1-1-4, 1-1-2 or 3. In
the Atlanta Braves effect.
Yeah, exactly. 3-2 pitch to Chipper Jones. Skip Carey. My wife's a Chicago Cubs fan.
WGN.
Because of satellite dishes.
Sure.
How does Northwest Pennsylvania become a Cubs fan? It was because they had a satellite dish.
It was everywhere.
It was
I remember I got to watch Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game in the dorms.
Wow.
Because we got WGN on the dorm cable package.
Yeah,
that's something Penn State students would not understand today.
We had basic antenna. I had to buy like a booster to get ABC in my room. I had one channel. I had WNEP out of Scranton, Wilkesburg.
Nice. Yeah,
That's
sure.
the only channel we had to
Channel 16.
So I had Monday Night Football, and I had Tim the Toolman Taylor once a week. And that was the only shows we watched. But like Sundays, you couldn't watch the NFL. And then a year later, then they put the college cable in there, and they got it was all digital.
When Noble was here on Tuesday, we were driving around campus a little bit, and I was, we were just talking about how much has been built up and changed since we were in school. And I said, the campus really did lose something when they finally got rid of all the old bungalows from World War II.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, they were like, rundown eyesores, but you came here and you looked at that and you realized, like, man, this place has been around. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened.
Weathered.
Yeah. I was like, there was some charm.
Right next to the chicken coop.
I was just going to say, there was some charm to the place where you got on campus and they were like, okay, here's the laboratory where man first saw the atom through an imaging microscope. Here's where one of the greatest coaches in college football coaches one of the top teams in America every week. And here's some chicken coops.
There's some chicken coops.
Yeah, they're all like 10-minute walk
right next
from each
to the
other.
pool of scantily clad co-eds, but there's our chicken coops, and it smells like a chicken coop.
Yes.
And then you go across the street where Eisenhower is now, and they were military huts. That's where the ROTC kids live.
Yes, I missed that. I missed that charm, man.
I got you. They gave it a little.
I give it a little personality,
I got
man.
you. Everything's
You know
a
what I'm
little modern now. You know, I mean,
it's still great.
Just think about Pennsylvania pizza. I hope everybody's liking the show because it's like me and Booch going down memory lane here. So we did a campus run.
I'm talking about the 76ers, my friend.
Yeah, go down the campus run and run down, start at the football building, go down to Top Trees, and then all the way up around, and then down Atherton, down College Avenue, and then PA Pizza. Remember that hill that was there, and then they had the family living.
Yes,
they were the family living houses, and it was
right.
It was like
for like grad students,
a 6x6 place with a roof on it, and there was hundreds and hundreds of them there, but they're all gone now too. They're gone. Everything's gone, man. I mean, it's they were weathered. They were done.
You know what's not gone? Speaking of pizza places, shout out to College Pizza.
Still there.
I mean, like Twinkies, cockroaches, and College Pizza, man. That place is just.
Are you making fun of my dog again?
Resilient as you're going to get.
Making fun of my dog?
No. Your dog's going to survive the Holocaust as well.
Yep. The nuclear Holocaust is coming. Twinkies, cockroaches, and my dog.
Your dog will probably go down to College Pizza for a slice of breadstick and a soda.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
So back to your recruitment and your career at Penn State.
Oh, yeah. So then,
the Conlin family legacy of Penn State football.
They get up here, so I get to Penn State. And the funniest stories I always tell this one is I went with my mom and dad when we dropped my brother Buck off. And actually, my brother was up to Philadelphia this past weekend, and he had some pictures he had bought home. And that, when my mom and dad died and they sold the home, there was like thousands of pictures. So we just like put them in shoe boxes and that one's Buck, that one's Keith, that one's Kenny, Craig, all this stuff. So he brings his bunch of his pictures up. And there's a picture of him the first day we dropped him off. And I took the picture, and I tell this story all the time that like literally my mom and dad, we drop him off over like right outside of Willard building, and he's got to walk up to that long college walkway up to the library. He has to go do some testing.
Okay.
And my dad parked his van right there, and him and my mom sat in that van, watched my brother walk a half mile, quarter mile up there. And my dad tells the story. He's like, if he turned around and walked towards, I would have said, let's go. Because he goes, it was his first son. He was dropping him off and we were leaving.
Yeah.
So my dad has to stop 10 miles out of town because he was crying so bad. Him and my mom, and I'm in the backseat crying. It's our first member to go of school away to college. And
see, now if that would a moment, if you would have been the first son they were dropping off, and that moment happened in the mid-'90s.
And then it happened in 1991.
He would have been parked there for 30 seconds, and then some campus cop would have come up and told him he couldn't keep his car parked there.
I have another great story about that. And one time my dad, he parked, and he got a ticket. I said, Dad, no one pays those things. Don't worry about it. 6 months later, he goes, I got a $50 fine here. And I was like, oh.
That's what they told Cade McNown, apparently.
God, sorry about that, Dad. So 1991, my mom, my dad, and my girlfriend, they dropped me off in State College. They were more worried about getting out to their camper. And they were like, we're going to dinner tonight. And I was like, well, where am I going? She said, you're going to work. Don't screw this up. So they dropped me off, like put my bags in Nittany Hall where we were preseason camp.
Yeah.
And then they drove away. And I was like, where the hell's the crying? Where are the tears and all this stuff? And I was like, nothing.
No.
It was like my mom gave the old, we'll see you in 3 weeks. Don't screw this up.
Seal got popped and you were done.
I was like, where are the tears, dude? No one's crying here for me. I'm away in college. And when they drove away, I'm like, dude, I'm in college right now. And I had just got done playing the Big 33 games. That's the other thing about the Big 33 games was so great. Because I played with like 7 guys who were eventually my teammates in the Big 33 game. We played a week before we got here.
Did you guys play
Maryland.
Texas?
Maryland.
Okay.
So we had Dave Thomas and Ricky Rowe from Maryland were on the Maryland team.
Ricky Rowe. Yeah. Nice.
Transferred to Pitt. And it was me, Eric Clare, Atkins, Mike Archie, Johnny Whitman, Brian Miller, who ended up going to 13th grade and coming in a year later.
Okay. All right. Because I was going to say, I didn't think he was in your recruiting class.
Yeah.
So there you
go. He went to 13th grade. So me, Eclair.
Super underrated defensive back in Penn State football history.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Very good player. Him and Kim Herring.
Yeah.
Pretty good one, too.
Yeah.
Right
Ridiculous.
Out there, So,
ridiculous.
So then we get up to Penn State, and it was hard for me at first because everybody, I learned it later in my career that, I was known as Buckwheat's little brother. So, they saw Buckwheat as his All-American offensive tackle in 1986. And then I show up in 1991 raw as hell. I hardly even played offensive line in high school. So I struggled. So I remember like looking back on it, talking to some of the older guys, and it was like, when your brother's here, they expect you to come in and just take up right where your brother left.
Right.
And then, there was growing, a lot of growing pains and a lot of that type of stuff going on. And, it didn't click for me for at least a year and a half and screwed my shoulder. I've had a couple of shoulder surgeries and stuff like that. But
so when you first made the jump from high school to college, did you, I know this happens to a lot of offensive line recruits.
I was a D-line, dude. I didn't play high school offensive line.
I
played center.
You just said that, yeah. You
like
didn't play
3
a
or
whole
4
lot?
games when they needed me, and I played tight end for a game or 2.
I know you said you were a defensive tackle here for about 5 seconds, right?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So they recruited me. Oh, yeah, you're recruiting you. You're playing D-line. You're playing D-line. I'm like, all right, I want a shot at D-line. I literally lasted 15 minutes of a walkthrough practice. And then Jim Williams looked at me and goes, hey, why don't you spend the second half of practice over with the offensive line? And I never got back from the plantation.
So same question, though, with defensive line. Like I know with Division I caliber guys in high school, a lot of times you are just bigger and stronger than most of the competition. Mm-hmm. So you don't really have to have a whole lot of technique. You just have to be yourself, basically.
Learn, man.
Did you run into that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I played super high. I played against guys who were so much smaller than me.
Right.
They weren't going to move me, so I could just look in the backfield and all, and I'm going against John Jurek, Todd Rucci, and Derek Pickett. They're going to rip my head off, you know what I mean? Paul Seaver's there, and, again, there's all offensive linemen. I tell the story a lot. I know I say that a lot, sorry, but I walked into my meeting room in State College, and if you add in our class of me, Marco, Jeff Hardings, and Andre Johnson, and you add in my class and the 4 that were ahead of us, and there was, I think, 17 offensive linemen who went to the NFL.
Wow.
That's how many guys that were in that locker room, who were in that offensive line room, who went to the NFL. And not everybody made it. Not everybody makes the NFL. And,
I'm doing the math in my head to figure out whether we've sent 17 offensive linemen to the NFL since the year 2000. It's probably pretty close.
Now I'm saying people had shots. And
right. No,
like
I get it. I get it.
But you had, the 92 class had 4 or 5 guys on that. And my class had 5.
Yeah.
Pickett Malinowski, Paul Seaver, Bucky Greeley. It may have been 13 then, now I'm thinking about it. But remember, there's 5 classes. And they add in the tight ends. You had Kyle Brady,
Troy
Drayton sitting in there. It was amazing. Our class that came in, it was Joe's greatest recruiting class by far. And the older guys knew it, and they were pricks about it, and they wanted to humble us as fast as they possibly could.
Yeah.
So within the first hour or 2 of being on campus, I looked like you. They powdered every one of us.
Oh, okay.
Every one of us got powdered. We were all shaved their heads, and Joe got pissed. Joe was furious. He hated hazing.
Yeah, right.
Because you embarrass them all you want, a little freshman, I'm a little teapot or freshman entertainment night. That's fine. Just don't humiliate them, and that's what they were doing by shaving our head and stuff like that. And he was pissed, and we didn't have to do any kind of rookie entertainment or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah, he was very mad about it. But that was that clever. The older guys they knew that we had to get knocked down a few pegs, and rightfully so.
Gotcha.
we would have done the same thing. We came in with a guy, Scott Stratton.
I remember the name.
He was the number 1 offensive lineman in the high school that year, and Jeff Hardings was 242 pound, 1-star who was just coming in as an athlete and this and that, and then Stratton, I think he played maybe half a year. Well, year and a half total, but he broke his leg and ankle so bad one time.
This is not news to anyone, but that is by far the worst projection from high school to college position in terms of recruiting rankings. You and I could probably sit here and rattle off names of top offensive linemen who have been recruited by Penn State that barely ever played a snap.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for those guys.
Meanwhile, John Urschel was a 2-star.
Yep. It's just he fit in the right time, the right place, and you have guys who were stars and never really learned how to play football.
That's it.
I won't bring a name up. When I was coaching here, we had a big kid come in here, number 1 offensive lineman, but he was every bit of 6'6", 325 pounds, but he didn't know how to lift weights. He did not want to lift weights, and He was never in shape. He was never strong. It's almost like he didn't want to play football.
Yeah.
And it suffered because he was getting punished in the weight room because he didn't want to be there. He was not showing up, and then it just snowballs and stuff like that, and then that goes onto the field. You know what I mean? That kind of attitude goes onto the field where he doesn't want to be there, and then you get guys mad at him, so where they are literally he has a bullseye on his chest to get after him, and let's make him tougher and make him worth it. I mean, see if he's pretty good. But guys that I know that played on defense. Like when Stratton was a huge man, like enormous.
Yeah.
And he said if he'd get into people, he would do a lot of damage to people. But it was just getting to that point where he got hurt. His weight blew up from there, and he never really got back to it.
Well, consistency is such a big part of it. You can't be good like one every 3 or 4 snaps. You got to be at a consistent level.
What's the other thing about offensive line and football in general is you got to have a very, 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 very short memory.
Sure.
Because, I've seen it a million times on the football field in practice as coaching, and that is, you make one mistake and then you come out of the huddle and you're still thinking about that mistake.
Yeah.
You're going to compound that. Now you made 2 mistakes because you're going to get blown up the next play. Your head's not in the next play. You just got to stop thinking about it. I mean, people always say why cornerbacks and safeties, they make a play and they got to get up and dance and this and that. I mean, it is what it is.
The ball gets overthrown by 10 yards and they celebrate.
It's a confidence thing that these guys have to have.
Yeah.
And as an offensive lineman, you got to have the confidence that you're better than that guy and you're going to make it happen and you're going to outwork him. But if you start getting down on yourself, you're done. You're screwed. And
the worst position to play in modern football, college or pro, right now is cornerback. I think for sure, because every rule change in the last 20 years has gone against you being able to do your job.
Yeah, I remember. It's actually pretty funny. Is like my little brother told me, like they were running scout team when he got here in '93. He was a freshman in '93, so they were just like, hey, just throw a bunch of guys out there. So he was like, he's a center, but then he was like, they have him a tackle, and that's like the difference in playing corner and safety, pretty much.
Yeah.
And he was just like, holy crap, man, you got to get on your feet, on your haunches, going back and get a blow delivered to you and be athletic and strong enough to withstand that.
Yeah.
He was just like, that's tough, man. That's a tough position to play. And I always thought the corner would be one of the hardest things if you had never played it you got to play backwards. You got to run backwards and you got to have your back to the ball and you got to read the receiver's eyes. It's a tough position to play.
Yeah, and the receiver knows where he's going and you don't. Yeah.
That's your only, as an offensive player, that's the only thing is the advantage for you is that you have the snap cadence and you know where you're going, but they don't know if it's a pass or run. That's why in practice, you get absolutely murdered in practice because you're running a pass stud drill. It's like, gee, what do you think the defensive lineman thinks this play is?
Right.
It was always like one of those things, and that was about Joe. Joe would just not punish us, but pound us, inside run, outside run, and then pass thud. So that they knew, and they were like, the defensive linemen like pinning their ears back, like ready to go, and they're not looking for run at all. That's why game times were so easy for us, in my opinion. And
yeah, I've said that before. Yep.
I remember I tell you the story about Jim Nelson. Jimmy Nelson was my brother's roommate at college. Okay. And he was a 94 would have been one of his first starts. So he was a redshirt freshman, and he's sitting there. We're at top trees, and he's throwing up. He couldn't keep a meal down. It was 95, excuse me. So it would have been his sophomore year. It was his first start of his career, and he's like all sick and getting nervous. And I'm like, dude, just relax. He said, "You're so well coached. You're so well learned, and what's going to happen today? It's going to happen in slow motion." I said, "Just relax. Let it come to you." And you will your instincts will take over. So he's sitting there, has 11, 12 tackles, plays a great game, comes back and looks at me. He's like, dude, it was slow motion. It was unbelievable out there. And it is. If you practice hard the way we practiced, the games on Saturday are actually pretty fun.
One of the true freshman starting debuts I will never, ever, ever forget, because it was just like I was blown away, was Marcus Allen against Ohio State in 2014. He was a true freshman, and I want to say, I think it might have been Ryan Kaiser who got hurt.
Yeah.
And if Marcus had played at all, it was just on some special teams.
Exactly, yeah.
And he had to step in and start against God, who would have been the Ohio State quarterback at that point? I mean, it was that run of like great signal callers they had.
The guy who went, oh my
He
God.
actually played receiver for the Eagles for a year, and I'm blanking on his name. But
What am I thinking? Terrence or Torrey? Terrence.
no. But anyway, they had to
Troy Smith?
No, after Troy Smith.
Okay.
But anyway, they had to that was the year they won the national championship.
Okay.
And Marcus Allen had to make his first collegiate start against that Ohio State juggernaut. And I mean, he played the game of a lifetime.
Yeah. It happens if you're coached well enough, and he had the confidence that he could do that, and there's no problem. That's always going to happen. And he comes from a pretty good high school. He wasn't. I mean, you don't want your first game being Ohio State on national television at 8:00 at night, but I guess
probably not.
It's going to be.
You know what? But if you do, you may as well play lights out, and he did, man.
Yeah, you gotta like that.
Start of a great career.
Yeah, he's still with the Steelers.
He is. Yeah.
Good. I like how there's a guy right there who's he's in between positions.
Yeah.
He's not a linebacker. He's not a safety in the NFL. But you know what? He has a hell of a job doing special teams, and he can fill in at linebacker. And they drafted him. They have groomed him to be a special teams nut.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a hell of a career.
Well, so he was on – Marcus Allen was on the bubble to get cut.
Yeah.
His first 2 seasons for sure. In fact, I don't know this 100%, but I've talked to a couple friends of mine in the Pittsburgh media, and they think that there's some validity to it. He made a pick in the last preseason game of the year, his second year in the NFL, and I have always said I think if he doesn't get that pick, he ends up getting cut. But he made that one play, and I think the coaches liked him. They were looking for an excuse to keep him around.
Like he makes plays.
And so he was in a position to make a play when he absolutely knew he needed to, and he did it. And they're like, okay, we're going to keep him around. And now I think, like you said, I think he's settled in because, look, everybody needs a Steve Tasker type or an Ike Reese for the Philadelphia Eagles fans out there.
Ike Reese he fought me and my brother in 2 different years.
Oh, I bet.
At Michigan State.
I bet.
Oh, it was hilarious. We always talk. Me and Puppy call him TS. Ike talking smack, Ike talking poo, Reese. But he does a hell of a job. But I loved him with the Eagles.
Yeah,
he knew what his job was.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't Jeremiah Trotter. That wasn't his job. He wasn't Seth Joyner. It wasn't his job. He was a special teams guy. Got the guys pumped up and stuff like that, and did a hell of a job with it.
Did you see, by the way?
Great career, by the way.
Penn State made the Final Four for Jeremiah Trotter's son.
St. Joe's Prep.
Yeah, it's good. That's going to be. I know. You got that whole thing.
Yeah,
going
I got you.
It's going to be a tough fight to get him here, but I'd love to see it.
His brother goes Clemson, right? He has one brother at Clemson. I believe.
Clemson. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. That's a cool thing. That like Clemson does a pretty good job with the legacies and stuff. I mean, they really do.
Yeah. I mean, they do a lot of things right there.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So, what do you think about this Herm Edwards stuff?
Oh, I'll tell you what I'm worried about is our guy.
That's just
Brenneman.
Adam Brenneman, yeah. I mean, I'm watching that. I'm like reading it, and I was like,
it's hard to believe.
How vicious the instantly came out. And I'm like,
Herm,
what the hell do they do? Herm.
So, like, what I thought was funny is they listed all the stuff that they were looking into them for. And
Please, tell me. I didn't read any of that.
They put, I haven't seen the dirty details yet. But the broad stroke stuff, they put all the worst stuff up front. They were like major recruiting violations, like like improper contact, violation of NCAA rules, and then they put COVID violations.
I did see the COVID violation part. I was like, oh my god!
I was like, this is like when the cop pulls you over for speeding, and then they get you for the busted tail light, and having something hanging from your rear view mirror. They're just looking for extra charges to throw on. It's like, okay, you were paying your recruits, you improper benefits to players. Your boosters are giving $100 haircut. Yeah, and Herm didn't wear his mask right. Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to imagine Herm, who, you would think, like, always struck me as kind of a stand-up guy. I mean, obviously, as an Eagles fan, I got a big soft spot for Herm Edwards. But the gravity of what they are being accused of right now, like they are, I don't know if you saw the headline, but serious speculation that staff may not be able to coach this fall.
Jeez.
Yeah, big time.
That's Marvin Lewis is out there.
That's right. Yeah.
He used to collect the money from the
after
from the Bengals, and he just went out there and coached for free.
20 years coaching the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, he took a job as he's just a moderator out there. He's just doing he's vacationing in Tempe for a couple months a year, so getting paid by the Cincinnati Bengals. Unbelievable.
Well, if he gets let go, Marv, because he hasn't been there long enough to be part of the sanctions, probably. So he won't have like a show cause.
He's just an advisor.
That's what I'm saying. So he can kind of escape untethered. Penn State's NFL consultant guy, Dole Loggins, he just took an NFL job. So or not maybe a college job, but he's off the staff. That he's a tight ends coach somewhere. I forget where he went. But hey, let's bring Marvin, man.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him come here. I like and respect Marvin Lewis as a coach tremendously. And again, like what he was, the stability he brought to the dumpster fire that was the Bengals is respectable.
On a yearly basis.
But look, man, you can't coach in the NFL. You can't coach a decade plus and not win a playoff game and keep your job. It's just,
And then have a middle linebacker who literally is cheap shotting every third play. Vontez perfect. Unbelievable. Yeah,
remember that Steelers game where they had like that succession of crazy things go wrong and they lost?
They won the game.
My favorite moment from that game, my wife is a Steelers fan, and she is totally despondent.
From Miami.
Well, born in Miami, but spent most of her life in Pennsylvania. So you got to understand, too, like her family coming from Miami, I think they poisoned her against that franchise because they all basically disavowed it after they just kind of ran Dan Marino out there at the end. People get attached to the players, right? And nobody liked Wayne Huizenga for multiple reasons down there after the way he sold off. The whole thing got ugly. Okay, so Steelers fan, and I'm telling her, I'm like, don't worry, this is the Bengals. Not only are they going to find a way to blow it, the only way they can blow it is going to be an epically hilarious fashion. So just join me in waiting to see what happens here. So then you had the fumble. Then you had the perfect foul. But then my favorite part of the whole collapse was there was a second personal foul penalty after the perfect play. And before anybody knew what was going on, because there was like a melee on the sidelines.
Joey Porter was on the field.
Yes. I said to my wife, I was like, the only way this can get more hilarious than it already is if Pac-Man Jones is the guy who drew the second flag. Sure enough. Yep. It was like it was scripted, right? The whole thing felt like it was scripted.
There we go. That's your boy.
So
you guys,
I'm not saying
state high school playoff guys in town here. The boys from Redline are going down. They got a game at 4:30.
Good stuff.
Got to keep the East and West Coast rivalry going. LaSalle plays tomorrow. LaSalle, they're playing North Allegheny. I got a lot of friends from North Allegheny, so I have a lot of money on this game. A lot of bets, a lot of booze and cases of beer on these games. So I got the boys coming in later. Gonna take care of them for dinner and all.
North Allegheny, the only thing I know about them is they've got a really big school district charitable foundation.
Sure.
And they raise almost as much money as State College does. Now, of course, we've only been around for 5 years.
Gotcha.
So
I always say North Allegheny is like, they're always good in every sport because they have a lot of kids, but they also have a very good athletic program.
Yeah,
they're
sure.
like North Penn from the East.
Oh, right.
They're good in every man and woman sports, and so it'll be an interesting game tomorrow. I hope to see the boys tonight here. It was fun trying to get them all set up with restaurants and hotels and where to have breakfast. And then they're like, "Oh, we're going to go to the Creamery." I'm like, "No, you're not going to go to the Creamery. It's weird hours. They close at 6:00."
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I tell you what, though, you know what warms my heart?
Jägermeister?
Yes. But sporting events being played in Happy Valley in the summer, people coming here, staying in hotels, going to restaurants, like here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Man, I think people don't appreciate the degree to which we all got beat up here in the last 14 months. And so, like, by grace of God, thankfully, most businesses, and apologies to those who didn't make it through by the skin of their teeth, but most businesses just manages to thread the needle. And now things seem to be ticking back in the other direction. So I really, really hope we've seen the worst of it. I don't know.
Coach. It's good to see everybody back here and Rebecca. I mean, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
So you watch the football playoffs in high school. You go out there and you get the PIAA trophy, and you get like a 4 foot by 4 foot Hershey bar.
Oh, right.
Why doesn't Penn State give out that creamery ice cream to the kids when they win? They run out there.
That's an excellent question.
Is it a recruiting violation? Could be.
Well, you see, what you do is you get, like diner company to come in and donate a giant grilled sticky.
Oh,
then it's not a recruiting violation.
There you go. They got to pay $1 for it.
Actually, and look, it's a recruiting violation for like 2 weeks. Then you're going to bring him in and be like, okay, like here's Sean Clifford to endorse grilled stickies and creamery ice cream. It's going to be a whole new world, Goon.
I don't want to talk about it. That's next week.
Yeah, that's why we looked back on Penn State football in the 80s with the chicken coops and the war bungalows.
Unbelievable. Loved it. 12 years old, 13 years old, living here in State College, and coming up here every weekend with those guys was the best time of my life. It was a good time.
Not as good a time as story time with Goon, though. My favorite time.
And it ended in 1997 when my brother played his last game here, and it was just funny because my parents were Thursday morning to Monday afternoon. It was just like we used to spend 14 hours here. Now they spend like 4 days. So
nothing beats the Penn State weekend.
That was the progression of the Conlin family at Penn State football.
I'll finish up here by saying this. There's one thing that has lasted, well, many things, but one of the things that's lasted from my Penn State career is email etiquette. Whenever I'm closing an email, I start that I'm writing from Thursday morning on. I always end it by saying, have a good weekend. Because even if you're going to write back to me in 5 minutes, the weekend has already started because it's Thursday, the Penn State weekend.
I agree. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls, Thursday through Sunday.
Europe's got nothing on Happy Valley.
Gotcha. Booch, good job.
Thanks so much, man.
The scab, the replacement of the year, buddy.
That's what I do. Cross the picket line.
My man, Powder. Go Sixers.
Ironhead's going to be back. Damn it. Ironhead is going to be back next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Line Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. live from State College's Quaker Steak and Lube. Take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. Go State and go Sixers, I guess.